They laughed while throwing Coca-Cola on an elderly couple. Unaware their son was a Navy SEAL, the evening was supposed to be peaceful, a golden sunset stretching across the small-town park, the gentle sound of laughter from children echoing nearby, and two elderly souls, Mr. and Mrs. Parker, sitting quietly on a worn wooden bench. They held hands as they always did, watching the ducks glide across the pond. For 50 years, they had shared that same bench every Sunday, reliving memories that seemed to grow fainter with age. But on that particular day, peace was about to be shattered by cruelty disguised as amusement. A group of young men, reckless, loud, and fueled by arrogance, entered the park. Their laughter echoed too loudly, their words too sharp. They spotted the old couple sitting quietly, and one of them, Tyler, smirked. "Hey, look at them," he said mockingly. "Probably waiting for their next doctor's appointment." The others chuckled, tossing an empty soda can in the grass. The Parkers didn't respond. They had seen this type of disrespect before. Mrs. Parker squeezed her husband's hand, whispering softly, "Just ignore them, Harold." He nodded, his wrinkled face calm, but his eyes held a quiet sadness. Moments later, one of the boys pulled out a bottle of Coca-Cola, shook it violently, and shouted, "Hey, Grandpa! Catch!" Before Harold could react, the cold, sticky liquid splashed all over his shirt and across his wife's lap. The group burst into laughter, doubled over with delight at their own cruelty. Mrs. Parker gasped, her frail body trembling as she tried to wipe the soda from her dress. Harold stood up, his voice low and steady. "That was unnecessary," he said softly, but instead of remorse, the laughter grew louder. "What's the matter, old man? Gonna cry?" Tyler sneered, pulling out his phone to record the scene. The video caught the elderly couple's humiliation, the kind of moment that would later go viral for all the wrong reasons. What none of them knew was that the Parkers had a son, a quiet, disciplined man named Jack Parker. To the world, Jack was just another name on a list of military personnel. But to those who truly knew him, he was something far more, a decorated Navy SEAL who had spent years serving his country in silence and sacrifice. That evening, Jack came home unexpectedly after completing a long mission overseas. He was greeted by his mother's red eyes and his father's unusually quiet demeanor. "What happened?" he asked, his voice immediately sharp with concern. His mother tried to brush it off, but when he pressed, she finally confessed, showing him the viral video that had begun circulating online. Jack watched the video in silence, his jaw tightening, his hands clenching into fists. The laughter on the screen echoed in his ears like gunfire. His parents' humiliation, the look of fear on his mother's face, and the mockery of his father's dignity, all burned into his mind. The next morning, Jack went to that same park. The sun rose quietly, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. He sat on the same bench his parents had sat on the day before. When the group of young men appeared again, laughing and swaggering, they didn't recognize him at first. Jack looked like an ordinary man, simple t-shirt, calm expression, but his presence carried an unmistakable gravity. Tyler was the first to speak. "You waiting for story time, old man's son?" he snickered, recognizing Jack from the resemblance. His friends laughed again. But Jack didn't respond. He simply stood up, walked closer, and said in a tone so calm it chilled the air, "You think humiliating people makes you strong? Relax, man. It was just a joke," one of them muttered. Jack took another step closer. "A joke?" he repeated quietly. "My father is a retired firefighter. He spent his life saving people. My mother was a nurse who worked night shifts for 30 years. And you humiliated them, for what? Likes on your phone?" The group shifted uncomfortably. Something about Jack's steady gaze unnerved them. His calmness was more terrifying than any anger they had expected. Tyler tried to laugh it off. "What are you gonna do? Lecture us?" Jack's eyes hardened. "No," he said softly. "I'm going to teach you respect." Before any of them could react, Jack moved, not violently, but with the precision of a man trained to control every movement. He effortlessly disarmed one of the boys holding a soda bottle, twisted another's wrist in a quick motion, and within seconds had the entire group frozen in shock. His movements weren't wild or aggressive, they were calculated, efficient, and terrifyingly controlled. Then he stepped back, his voice firm. You think strength is in your fists or your words? Strength is protecting the ones who can't fight back. It's standing tall when life knocks you down. My parents don't need revenge. They need people like you to grow up. The boys stood there, silent now, faces pale and humbled. Tyler swallowed hard. We didn't mean to apologize to them, Jack interrupted sharply. Every single one of you. That afternoon, 6 young men stood outside the Parkers' small home, heads bowed, mumbling apologies they should have spoken long ago. Harold looked at them quietly, his hands clasped behind his back. What's done is done, he said simply. Just remember, respect costs nothing. Mrs. Parker, kind as ever, invited them in for tea. It was the first time they saw the kind of grace that can't be faked, the quiet strength that no cruelty can destroy. In the following weeks, the same video that once spread humiliation began circulating again, but this time, it carried a message. The clip now ended with a short recording of Jack's speech about respect and compassion. Millions watched, many commenting on how a single act of empathy can ripple across the world. The boys, once known for their arrogance, began volunteering at a local shelter. Tyler even returned to school, studying social work after seeing the damage of his own actions. As for the Parkers, they returned to their Sunday bench. The laughter in the park no longer sounded cruel, it sounded like hope. Jack would sometimes join them, sitting silently between his parents, feeling the warmth of peace that he had fought to restore. His mother would smile and say, "You've always been our protector." Jack would glance at her gently and reply, "You taught me everything I needed to be one." Sparkle's inspiring message, respect is not demanded, it's earned through compassion and humility. True strength lies not in power or pride, but in protecting and uplifting those who can't fight for themselves. The video spread like wildfire. Overnight, the clip of Jack confronting the boys in the park hit millions of views. At first, it was shared out of shock. Viewers couldn't believe the calm, disciplined man who stopped 6 bullies with only words and controlled movement. But then, something unexpected happened. People began watching the full story. They saw the cruelty the Parkers faced, the humility in their forgiveness, and the transformation that followed. Across social media, comments poured in. That's real strength. This man didn't seek revenge, he taught them respect. We need more people like this. News channels picked up the story, dubbing it "the seal who silenced hate." But Jack wasn't looking for fame. He had lived his whole life away from cameras, serving quietly in the shadows. Now, he found himself at the center of a storm he never asked for. One morning, as Jack was heading out for a run, a reporter caught up to him outside his parents' home. "Mr. Parker, the world wants to know, why didn't you press charges? Why didn't you make them pay?" Jack stopped, turned to the reporter, and answered simply, "Because anger never teaches what understanding can." Then he walked away, leaving the world with a sentence that would be quoted for years. Meanwhile, Tyler and his friends faced a different kind of attention. Their faces were everywhere, online, on TV, in newspapers. They couldn't go anywhere without whispers following them. At first, they felt humiliated, angry even. But when Tyler's mother sat him down and said, "You made an old woman cry for fun. If you want to fix this, start by becoming someone she'd be proud of," something inside him shifted. Tyler reached out to Jack. He didn't expect an answer, but Jack invited him to meet. They sat on a park bench, the same one from that awful day. Tyler's voice shook as he spoke. "I'm sorry. I didn't think about what I was doing. I thought it was just a joke." Jack looked at him steadily. "That's the problem," he said. "Too many people think cruelty is a joke until it hurts someone they love." That conversation changed everything for Tyler. He started volunteering at a veterans rehab center, listening to the stories of men and women who had given everything for others. Slowly, his reputation began to rebuild, not through words, but through quiet actions. Back at home, Harold and Margaret Parker couldn't believe how their lives had changed. Letters arrived from strangers across the country, some apologizing for how the elderly are often treated, others thanking them for raising a son like Jack. One envelope contained a simple handwritten note from a teenager: "I used to laugh at people like you. Now I help my grandma every day. Thank you." One Sunday, months later, the park looked brighter than ever. The town had organized a small ceremony to honor the Parkers and Jack for their example of grace and forgiveness. The mayor spoke kindly, calling them a living lesson in dignity. But the most emotional moment came when Tyler stepped forward, holding a small wooden plaque. "This," he said, voice trembling, "is for the people who remind us that kindness is stronger than cruelty." He handed it to Margaret, who smiled through tears. Jack stood in the crowd, silent as always. He didn't need applause. He just watched his parents, his heroes, being honored for their strength, not as victims, but as examples of the power of forgiveness. As the sun began to set, Margaret turned to her son and whispered, "You know, Jack, maybe it was meant to happen this way. Maybe the world needed to see this." Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe. Sometimes pain is just a doorway for change." That night, Jack sat on the porch while the cicadas sang in the dark. His father joined him, sipping his coffee slowly. "You did good, son," Harold said softly. Jack looked out toward the park, the same one that had once been a place of cruelty and now stood as a symbol of kindness. "No, Dad," he replied. "We did good. You taught me the kind of strength that doesn't need a fight." And as the wind rustled through the trees, the town slept a little more peacefully, reminded that even in a world full of noise, one act of compassion can silence hatred louder than any shout ever could. Sparkle's inspiring message, Part 2. Respect isn't learned through fear, it's learned through example. When we respond to cruelty with calmness, when we replace revenge with wisdom, we don't just change one moment, we change people.